I mean, if you were to summarize where you are now, then, I mean, because, I mean, you do take a very distinct and quite, it's quite unique. I don't know what, I don't, when I read around you and then I read other things, you seem to come at things slightly different way, which is illustrated by your approach to, say, contemporary China. And when we probably come on and talk a bit more about this, but your relativism, which you say is part of being an anthropologist in a way, inevitably, is quite a powerful part of what you're doing. But the history also, and this notion that it sprawls out over time, which kind of breaks you out of that functionalist mode, breaks you out of a lot of the kind of, like you say, the paradigms that, and makes you see things in a very different way. How would you describe, if you were to summarize your particular brand of anthropology then, or whatever it is, or anthrohistorypology, or whatever it is, that what are the key features, would you say?
Well, I'll start by saying the odd feeling I have now in my late age, which is, I think we all imagine that when we go through our intellectual life, as we progress, we'll find new things, but the degree of wisdom, as it were, would not increase much. In other words, we'd tackle things roughly in the same way through our lives, and indeed we are brought up in our ageist society to believe that this will probably mean that after about the age of 60 or 65, when you retire, there will be a diminution. You'll understand less, and the surface of your ignorance will expand, and you will become out of date and no longer able to contribute very much. What I feel, oddly, and I don't know how long this will last, but I think it's what's fortunately been particularly captured by our interviews, is like I felt as a school boy at my second boarding school, Sedbergh. This is in the Yorkshire Dales, and you know them, and this is in the mountains of the West Riding, as it was. And here the town of Sedbergh lay in the valley, and behind it were three mountains. The first, which we could see all the time, was called Winder, and even from your first term you would run up this mountain and then down and so on and so on. Behind it was another mountain, higher Winder, and the longer run would take you up to the top of this mountain. But behind that was an even higher mountain called Calf, the Calf. And the long, arduous, but wonderful walks or runs took you up to the Calf. And when you went up to the top of the Calf, you could see as easily as far as the sea, Morecambe Bay. You could see the Lake District mountains. You could see all the other kind of pennines, the different kind of limestone pennines to the south, Pennygent and Wenside, and so on. And my intellectual life has really been like that, sort of. Winder, the first mountain, was my anthropology and so on training. Higher Winder was the rest of my academic life as a teacher and so on. Now I feel I've climbed up to Calf, and what happens is that at each of these levels, you see the world through cloud. You know, you see bits of it and you can't see other bits of it, and there's a bit of cloud here and so on. And you can't get the total picture, partly through expansion to China, particularly, which is a lot of it has happened since I retired or near my retirement. Yeah. I feel that I've sort of begun to approach what Einstein talks about in one of my favorite quotations, about how problems will never be solved at the level at which they were set. You have to move above them. You can't solve the problems of America at the level of America and so on. And so now, for a moment, and of course, you have to start coming down at some point, but it hasn't, I think, happened yet. I feel the clouds have dispersed. I'm on the top of these mountains. And when you ask me questions, or when I'm writing things for Chinese magazines or talks, as I gave yesterday to a Renton University, I feel a sort of understanding, which I didn't have even 5 or 10 years ago, at a level. And that is what what has happened. It's rather like Captain Cook voyaging and finally getting to Australia and feeling I now have a map of the world.